Today I am interviewing Nia Neese. Ms. Neese is a graduate of Florida State University and has taught both kindergarten and first grade in her 14-year teaching career. Can you please explain your experience working with underprivileged children?
Okay, well, since I've been in Hillsborough County, I've taught at Title I Renaissance schools the entire time, and those are basically schools that have the lower socioeconomic students there. So I feel like that's pretty much all I've known. But even within that, you have the wide end of the spectrum. You have the kids that are, yes, they're at these schools, but they're high performing and they have lots of parental support. And then you have the kids that are at the lower end of the spectrum. They want to do well, but a lot of it is they have a lot of issues like homelessness or food issues or facing eviction and parents that work a lot. And it makes it difficult for the parents to do what the other students who do well, their parents do.
Okay.
So.
Now, what do you view as biases of the labor market as it pertains to education, income, and gender?
Okay. Well, when I think of that, it makes me think of, as a teacher, just being able to move up in the field. I feel like the bias there is there's a lack of opportunity for advancement for teachers. And I compare it to other fields like corporate America or what have you. I feel like there's always steps and stages where people can move up in those careers. But as a teacher, you're thinking, okay, well, I could go back to school and get my master's. And with that comes an increase in my pay. And maybe years ago, it used to be that way, but just even seeing what happens in my district, I have a lot of friends who have gone back to school and gotten their masters, and there's not been much of a difference in their pay. It's very frustrating. I also feel like, so I talked about the money advancement, just in general, it's very difficult to advance in the education field. And I feel like a lot of people take teachers for granted in the jobs that we do. You think it's just a babysitting job. There's a lot that goes into it. All of us who are teachers went to school for 4+ years or what have you, and we continue to keep going up in our education by attending trainings, and you have professional development and you have to get your in-service hours. So you're constantly getting new information so you can stay fresh and, abreast of what's going on out there. And I just don't feel like it's respected. So that, and then being a female in this field too, it seems that the men, when they want to be administrators and things of that nature, it's a lot faster. You see the men move around and make success, with what they're doing a lot faster than women.
Right.
So that's what I think of when I think of the biases.
So, is the current education system up for the task of combating this issue?
I think that if the powers that be would come in and talk to educators and really understand what's going on from that aspect, as opposed to coming in and just making sweeping reform without speaking to the actual people that are going through it, then yes, the chances of change are there. But not only that, they can't just go into the affluent schools and look around and see that everything is working for them. You have to come to the lower end schools where things aren't working out and talk to those teachers and understand from their viewpoint why it's not working, and actually listen to them. And a lot of us have great ideas as to what we think would help out, and then actually implementing them and then seeing what works. So yes, there's a way to combat it, but people have to come together and be willing to listen, and then action has to be taken. So yes.
Okay. What connections do you see between family income, a student's cultural background, and educational achievement?
I think all three are very much tied in together. I think that when it comes to educational achievement, I think all parents want their kids to do well in school. When I think of the cultural background, I think of different things that I've seen. So in the schools where I've taught, I've seen lots of African American families, lots of Hispanic families, a sprinkle here of maybe, Asian families or what have you. But what I notice, case in point, is like when we have conference night. In a black family, you might see one parent come, maybe both parents might come or what have you. Sometimes the parents don't come at all, and sometimes they bring their children with them. And that's not to say they don't care. Like I said, everyone has situations that are going on, especially in the type of schools I teach in. A lot of the times the parent can't get off work or they don't have someone to watch their child or what have you. What I notice in the Hispanic community, a lot of the times when it's conference night, the whole family comes, brother, sister, grandmom, whomever. And I feel like they really believe in the teacher, and they really respect the teacher, and they don't have any doubt about what the teacher is saying. And so I see that difference there. Family income, when I think of that, obviously the families that make more money, they want more for their kids. It seems that way, and maybe it's just easier for them to get more for their kids because they've got the means. So you're going to try and get your kid in the top schools, be it a choice school, magnet school, what have you, versus some families that don't have a lot of money. That does not mean they don't want the most for their kids. They want the most for their kids, but sometimes they don't know how to go about it. But also, again, they don't have the time to give towards the situation because they're thinking of, I got to keep a roof over my head. I got to keep from the lights being turned off and things of that nature. So I think both parties care. It's just easier for one party to move forward as opposed to the other party. So all of those relate in some way.
All right. Do you feel that education is the best way to create a stable and equitable society?
I do. I think education is very important. Yes. When I think of that, I think that they need to think about the fact that maybe all children aren't bound for college. I think of the fact that some kids, they know they want to be something when they get older, but they think, well, maybe it's not a doctor, or maybe it's not a lawyer. Maybe I want to be a mechanic because my dad's a mechanic. Okay, so you see that they're good in math and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I think that in order for them to be successful in society, maybe you make them have access to a trade, and they go to a trade school so they can use their skills and they don't feel less than because, okay, well, I'm learning this and now I can take what I know and I can do this and I can still be successful and, make money to provide for my family and things of that nature. But definitely having that education as a foundation, no matter what kids decide to do, is very important.
Is our education system set up for this task?
I think yes, again, if they listen to the educators, if you come in and you take in what we're saying to you, I definitely think it's possible that they could be up for the task.
And what changes would need to be made?
Just again, the realization that all kids are not bound for a 4-year school. Mm-hmm. It's perfectly fine, but making it accessible to them. And I think, letting kids know you have community college. You don't have to go to a 4-year college and not be able to have enough money to pay for it or end up in all this debt. You could go to a 2-year college, first and get this going. But yes, I definitely think those types of things would have to happen. And again, coming in and communicating with educators as to asking us, well, what do you need to make this happen so your students can be successful? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Have you seen evidence of educational inequality?
I definitely have, yes. Yes, I have. I think about just within the type of school that I teach and the affluent schools and just the resources that are available. It's very frustrating when the school grades come out and you see the same schools that are getting the A's and the B's and things of that nature, and that they have more access to technology that we don't have. They've got tablets and things like that where the teachers don't necessarily have to pull out of their pocket to get it. You have high parent involvement, so they're doing all the things that teachers can't do to make sure that their school has these things because these parents really want their kids to have that. Yes. Versus being in a lower end school where sometimes I feel like we're forgotten and kind of shoved in the corner. Our technology is not the best. We don't always have the internet that's up and running. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have computers in your room, but they're way outdated and they're constantly breaking. And then you also work at a school where they have someone in the tech position, but that person doesn't necessarily know how to go about fixing things. So then you sit with a broken computer in your room most of the year. Mm-hmm. They have these intervention programs for the lower schools because they want them to make gains and do better. However, a lot of the interventions require the computer again, and then you are back in that same predicament where the computer doesn't work, so your kids aren't getting on there enough during the week for the fidelity checks and things of that nature to show growth and things. So definitely I feel there's inequality there.
So what can be done to combat the educational inequality?
I think just making sure that everyone's on the same playing field. if you want our schools, if you're comparing, which is what's happening, a lot of times it's comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing our lower end schools with the higher end schools. So if you want us to be at the same level, then you need to give us the same resources, the same types of books, the same type of technology. Everything's working. Just the cleanliness, having the custodial staff take as much pride in it as the ones at these higher schools. Not saying that they are. Maybe sometimes the custodial staff is not provided with the things that these higher end schools are provided. So in order for it to be fair, everyone should be receiving the same things.
Right. Okay. And I think that goes into the next question. What inequalities between schools and school districts have you seen that contribute to inequality of educational opportunity?
Definitely. I think the two questions are tied together.
Okay.
In general, just everyone should be afforded the same, I guess, in a perfect world. But I don't understand why, if it can happen for this school, it can't happen for all of our schools.
Okay. So what do you feel are the pros and cons of full inclusion?
Okay, when I think of full inclusion, the pros definitely is having the kids be in the room with another child, and maybe they're different from the looks or what have you. However, I feel like both parties are getting to know the other, and hopefully it's creating empathy one for the other and educating them so that when they go out in the world, we don't have things where you see kids making fun of other kids because of their special needs or a missing leg or what have you. It just becomes the thing. The kids are used to seeing it. The school where I work in, they have a high ESC population. So there is a building for the ESC children. However, our kids go through that building all the time. Our specials classes are in there. So they're used to seeing kids in wheelchairs. They're used to kind of hearing the outbursts that some of those kids have that they can't control it. It's become the norm. So I pray that when these kids leave these schools and they go to middle school and high school, if they encounter a kid that is there and has been fully included within those programs, it's not that big of a deal because you've already been exposed to it. So that's a big pro, is that exposure. I think the con of it definitely would be taking the kids out of their programs and pulling them in a typical classroom before they're ready. So maybe they're not quite ready to be there, so it's causing a disruption in the classroom. Or putting the children in these classrooms and then not making sure to keep up with their services, which a lot of times in our lower schools, we have those issues. And it comes from the district again. There's no one to fill the position, or there's no one that's qualified to fill the position. And then you have a student that's sitting in your classroom that's not getting their needs met. I know that I taught a little girl at a school, one of the schools that I've worked in, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was in my classroom, and I was teaching single gender, all girls, and it was an amazing experience for her to be in the room. The kids got to know her, and it was very much like a family, and they took to her very well, and didn't matter that she was in a wheelchair or anything like that. However, because she was in my classroom and she wasn't with children that she is typically around, where they have the adults that can meet her services, something as simple as her having to go to the bathroom, I wasn't allowed to lift her out of the chair. But if she has to go, I can't just sit there and let her, not be able to get in there. But then there's a liability. I don't want to handle her in a way where I'm going to hurt her and things of that nature, and to call down and you can't get a hold of someone to come and see about her. That's frustrating. So if you're going to include them fully, make sure that all their services are still going to be met when they're within that classroom. But I think it's a great opportunity for both parties to learn from one another.
Okay, and this is the last question. How can schools make full inclusion successful?
I think, like I said, making sure that when you include that child within the classroom, you're going to keep up with their services and support the teacher fully. Because the teachers want to be successful just as much as we want the student to be successful. So they've got to maintain their end of the bargain and come in and see about those students and provide support for the teachers, because we want the best for that student and for all the students within the room.
Okay. All right. Once again, this was Ms. Neese. Thank you so much for interviewing with me and answering these questions.
Thank you.